Shalom, welcome to Tanya Outside In. We are in Perek Zion. We're actually in the fourth part of Perek Zion. I didn't think that it would have taken us 4 classes to get through Perek Zion, but it has done. And we're now obviously at the end of it, and we will, B'ezrat Hashem, complete it today. And the Rebbe goes off on, I suppose, wouldn't call it really a tangent, because it's a logical progression, but the Inyan of Zera Levatola, everyone understands what that is, yeah? That is, unfortunately, that is a Avera that he singles out and actually gives, he gives nearly a page, right, about 2/3 of a page to the Inyan, which in Tanya you realize is that's a big thing. Okay, the Rebbe does not give a lot of words to anything, and he does to this. So there's a few, we will read it inside, but I just want to give a little Hakdama, and then I want to talk about a Torah that is from the Tzemach Tzedek on Tshuva and Vidui. Okay, so everything is created of kalim and kalim and oiris, yeah, vessels and lights. There is nothing that exists without some kind of kli, and it has a neshama. You call it guf and neshama, yeah, body and soul. You could call it male and female. You could call it name and essence, shem and etzem. In the Lashon Kabbalah, it's always spoken of as or and kalim. There's 3 kinds of kalim. Anybody want to throw out the 3 kinds of kalim?
Tame, Noga, and Kadosh?
Yeah, Biduk. Okay, so Gabrielle, turn that into helpful English words.
Opaque, translucent, and transparent.
Exactly. Those are the 3 kinds of kalim. You have this, which is transparent. You have this, which is opaque, and then you have a kli that's translucent, which I don't have next to me. Okay, so everything that we do, I mean, every creature, this is one of the most important ways of understanding the mechanics of Hasidus and of Kabbalah, is to understand that the world is made of stuff, of things, but your thought, speech, and action is also things. Every thought begins and ends. Every speech begins and ends. Every action begins and ends. And every thought has a motivating energy. And every speech has a motivating energy or kavana. And every action has a kavana. Yeah, so that's called the kli and the or. The body and the neshama. So not only is there the chazir, who obviously has a guf and a neshama, but there's you eating breakfast this morning. Yeah, if it was a kosher breakfast and there was no avera attached to it, but you weren't planning on doing anything holy, which doesn't really account for you guys because you're all holy and you'd go and daven and learn and do mitzvahs with that energy. But then that vessel is a translucent vessel. It's of noiga. And then that means that the energy in it is available to be raised up. Whereas if that breakfast was treif, then that act was an issa, was asur, which is an avera, and then the kavana gets trapped in that coarse that coarse vessel, and it's not available to be elevated. And if the vessel becomes completely transparent, like an actual the act of a mitzvah. When we're actually giving tzedakah, or putting on tefillin, that's a holy act. The actual act itself becomes completely transparent, and the kavanah becomes almost a little bit less. It depends on who you go talk to, but according to the Tanya, it becomes less. The actual kavanah itself, so the actual kli itself is completely transparent. It really the actual action itself alludes to God, not like breakfast in the morning where you have to then go and be Makadish that action, because me and my non-Jewish neighbor Barry are eating the same breakfast. So there's nothing intrinsically holy about the act of breakfast. I have to bring holiness, I have to bring godliness to that act by drafting it into Kedusha. Whereas putting on tefillin, Barry, my neighbor, is not putting on tefillin because that's an intrinsically holy act. So now that's basically reality. Everything has a kli and an or. Every being, and that includes actions and speech and thoughts. Every being has a vessel and a light. Okay, like we said, you can call it a goof and a neshama. And that includes Averas. Okay, so an Avera, like the Mishnah says, creates a matraklin. What's the word, Gabriel? A matraklin?
What was the question?
Paraklit. Hoise mitzvah achas koine eloi paraklit echad. Va'oiver avera achas, someone who does an avera, koine eloi katego echad. He creates himself a katega, like a prosecuting angel. Okay, this is really the core of what we're saying. Okay, that this idea of creating a being, for when we do an avera, a being is created. Now the Tzemach Tzedek, in his Maimah on Tshuva, and if you're interested, it's a great idea. There's by Rav Shais Taub. If you go to, I think it's called Soul Words, yeah, or Soul Worlds. So just type in Shais Taub. Under all, like, you'll find he's got lots and lots of very amazing shirim, and he's got a whole series of like 10 classes on the Maimah of Tshuva in Derech Mitzvah Secha, video in Tshuva in Derech Mitzvah Secha. It is a fantastic 10 hours of learning that is very, very apropos for this time of year. To take that on, to get through that before Yom Kippur will be a transformational avoider for you. I recommend that strongly. Okay. Shalom, little guy. So what he basically explains there is that an Avera has a body and a soul. And he explains, and this is a very important idea, is that what is everybody made of? When I say everybody, I mean every vessel. What is every vessel made of? This is a great question. Every vessel is made of the same substance. What do we call that substance? Gabriel, you're on mute. You're thinking? Oh, you're not saying anything? What is the substance that every single vessel is made of?
Or
every single vessel. No. That's what goes in the vessel. What's the vessel made of? Every single vessel is made of. And this
actions.
Vessels. No. Everyone's going to go, Oisius. Oisius are vessels. Vessels are Oisius. That is what Oisius are. That's what vessels are made of, Oisius. Now it goes Oisius Duckus. You get extremely elevated Oisius to the point where you can't really even call them Oisius in a sense, but they're relative. It's relative. When you get into the very, very high levels of reality, then you don't really call them oisius, but they are oisius relative to the higher levels. Okay, but that's what kalim are.
You're saying you're saying all thought is made up of symbols.
All what?
That's the way we think. Pictures, thought, every thought, speech, and action are. Action is an expression of thought, which is made up of letters.
If you want
Is that right?
as you would say, there's kasiva, there's dibor, and machshava. That's all inyanim of oisius, but we're talking about levels much higher than machshava. Machshava's in oisius dakas mamash, but the chant went to for seichel to be mashpia into midas, yeah, for intellect to be mashpia into midas. That's also an inyan of oisius. Oisius are the interface. Remember, the keli of the level above becomes the or of the level below. So it's relative terms, but the interface between the higher and the lower is oisius. So that's called the goof. It's like an onion. It's like an onion with when you want to understand the Kabbalah world, you have the middle, like the ore from the very middle, and then that gets enclosed in, let's just say that gets enclosed in Atzilus, yeah? Then around Atzilus then becomes Bria. So the Atzilus, which was the Keli to the level above it, now becomes Panimi to the level below it, which is Bria. And Bria becomes enclosed within Yetzirah. So now Bria becomes the or Kalape Yetzirah. And Yetzirah becomes the Oisius. But then, or the Malbush. Okay, but that's the idea. It's called Oisius. So now when a person does an Aveira, which is either Machshava Dibur Maisa, that creates a goof of an Aveira. Okay? And then the kavana, which is a selfish kavana, would be considered the neshama of the Aveira. And that's the avoida of vidui. Vidui is the articulation, yeah, lefi the aleph base, and the charata that you did the Aveira. The how to say charata? The remorse, the regret. Yeah, the regret. Which one's keli? Which one's or? Which one's goof? Which one's neshama? Which one's oisius? Which one's or? Obviously, the dibor ashamnu begadnu, yeah, that's the oisius, and the charata, which is an inyan of kavana, that's the kavana, that's the or. So you need those two avoiders that kind of wipe up at least a decent halik of the mess of what we caused from the Aveira we did. It basically gets rid of, there's also other Aveiras of detaching it from its source and then removing the or its tail. Learn the mimer over there, okay? But the point is that the basic avoida of rectifying the sin is by speaking out the words of the vidui, the actual articulation of the words of the vidui, and then the charata, which gets rid of which somehow is an antidote for the kavana of the Aveira. You with me? And this is why the Ashkenazim, actually, we'll say this. Remind me about the video why Ashkenazim don't do a Shamnu B'Gadnu. By the end of it, we'll have a very compelling answer to that. Okay, so now with all that explained, basically that the action always creates a kli, and the kavana is the or that gets taken and, so to speak, held within the kli. Okay, and that's how all of reality works, including Aveiras. Now, with that as a hakdama, we'll understand will understand quite deeply what the Rebbe says over here in regards to the Avera of Zera Levatola, which means spilling seed in vain without it's not Isure Bia. Okay, there wasn't another party involved. Okay, and that's very important. We'll see. Achias shebatipas zera sheyatsu mimenu levatola. But when it comes to the life force of the drops of zera that come out of the mensch for nothing, levatola. Now, as we said, they get absorbed, as we spoke about with every Avera. This energy gets absorbed into the Shlosh Klipos Tameas. The Rebbe says, surprisingly, that the fix for this sin is actually quite straightforward. Okay, tshuva nechoina, not a tshuva me'umka deliba me'ava rabba, meaning it's not like a tshuva nechoina is an apology. You know, you admit what you did wrong, you regret it, you make a Kabbalah on yourself that you're not going to do it again, and if you don't make a real Kabbalah, then you didn't really regret it anyway. Yeah. And that there's no fireworks, there's no fanfare. It's just tshuva nechoina, a correct tshuva, okay, which is a very good thing to know about, because we do things to our loved ones all the time that don't demand a tshuva me'ava rabba me'umka deliba, yeah, but they demand a tshuva nechoina, where you just admit what you did was wrong, and you apologize, and you commit wholeheartedly that you will not do it again. And that makes a big difference. Big difference. You don't have to cry and tear your clothes and smash windows and beg. I mean, most of the time. Most of the things we do against our loved ones demand a tshuva nechoina. Okay? Uba kavana atsuma, this is the hard one, is heavy kavana, b'kriyas shema alamita. Kenoida me'arizal, as the Arizal explained or was known to him, he explained to us. And Maruz b'gemara, kol koyre kriyas shema shel mitasoi, keilu oiches cherev shel shtei piyos. As it says in the Gemara, in Brochas, that the one who reads Kriyas Shema on his bed, like meaning Kriyas Shema Shalamita, it's as if he holds a sword, shtei piyos, with a two-sided sword. Yeah, not like our knives. Our knives are one-sided. Yeah, a two-sided sword means it's sharp on both sides. Laharoig gufay sachitsoinim shnasu levush. You see how he said what we just said in just a few words? What he just said here, I'll translate in a moment, but what he just said here is a 4-page mimer in Derech Mitzvah by the Tzemach Tzedek, which a Sheis Taub spends 10 hours explaining. He said it in literally about 8 words. It's a sword with 2 sides, that destroys the body of these destructive forces. Yeah, this destructive being, whatever entity. That become a levush, a garment for the energy that is contained within these drops of zera. And secondly, and it raises up the chiyas, as the ones who know Kabbalah say. You realize how we explain that now? Do you see what, just again, you see what this sefer is? Do you get a little taste of what this sefer is? It's moiridic. I mean, I didn't even get into it, even a drop, compared to what the Tzemach Tzedek gets into it. But the Rebbe just said you would never, ever have any idea what was being said there if you didn't have the Masorah that came down with this sefer. It's very important. We've shown you that a lot of times now, but it's so important to remember that when you're in touch when you're touching the sefer, it is different. It is different to like nearly every other sefer that I know of. Or maybe it isn't, but there isn't the Masorah, there isn't still the Masorah that we know of. I don't know. But this is just it's different from my experience. Okay. And therefore, the Avera of Zera Levatola was not mentioned in the Torah Bechal Bias Asurus when it was talking about forbidden relationships. See, you would think that, I mean, that Avera of spilling seed, I mean, what's the difference whether it goes on the floor or into another person? Like it's the Avera. The Avera is the spilling of the seed, yeah? So he says, no, it's not the same at all. Listen. So Bechal business. Af shechamor mahem v'godol avoinoi bebechinas a gadlus v'riboy a tumah v'klipas. Even though it's more chomer, it's more chamor Zera Levatola than Bias Asurus on the bechina of size and of riboy, of magnitude, I suppose, of multiplication of the tumah and the klipa. But it says because this tumah gives birth to and multiplies ma'oid very much. But it says more than forbidden relations, which would include mishkav zocha, all kinds of incest, nida, ashes ish, yeah. That the actual damage that's caused to the world is greater with Zera Levatola. Greater. But that's important. Greater. Not stronger, he's going to say. Greater. But the difference is that the Bias Asuras, they add more strength to the klipa that has taken the zera. Ad she'enech ha'lolos misham achias b'tshuva ele im ken yaseh tshuva me'ava rabba kol kach ad she'zdonis na'asu lo k'zechuyos na'asu lo k'zechuyos. That Bias Asurus, a tshuva nechoina is not enough. Bias Asurus needs a tshuva gedola. He calls it a tshuva me'ava rabba. Yeah, a big tshuva. But what's the ava rabba? Anybody remembers what the third word when the Rebbe talks about Ava Rabbah? The third word he always attaches after Ava Rabbah. Ava Rabbah ba. Batanugim. Ava Rabbah batanugim. Yeah, that will give a little hint to what he's talking about here. But that it needs an Ava Rabbah, a tshuva ma'ava Rabbah, a deep tshuva with Bias Asurus, more than Zera Levatola. And I think the reason is because with Bias Asurus, there is an identification that takes place, which doesn't with Zera Levatola. For example, go to San Francisco and, ask someone there, or anyway, or jump out of anybody who's involved in the Avera of Mishkav Zocha. The chances are, if you say to them, who are you or what are you, they will answer with that Avera. That becomes an identity, a very deep identity. And the truth is, even though that a man who's having relations with women, us a relationship with women, wouldn't call himself, there's no name that goes with it. What comes along with that act is a deep level of identification. That's why the word for relations in the Chumash is yoidea, Adam Yada Es Chava, which, as we know, is identification. So whenever we're involved on an intimate level, and that's why we say intimate, whenever we're involved intimately with another, there takes place an identification with the other, emerging of the two. So when a man is involved in that Avera of Mishkav Zocha, his identity, Rahman al merges with the Avera. That's very, very bad. That's very, very negative. And that requires an ava rabba, a tshuva mi'ava rabba, extracting it from the level of pleasure, which is the source, the very source of the soul. That's the part of the soul that merges, is the tanug of the soul. That's what actually merges with the other. So that's why it requires a tshuva me'ava rabba, me'umka deliba. So now, basically what we said is that this Avera of Zera Levatola creates a quantitative, creates more tumor on a quantitative level. Whereas the Avera of Bias Asurus, forbidden relations, creates not as much tumor, but the tumor is contained in a vessel, and it to get that life out takes a much bigger avoider. And it's just when you understand it like kind of graphically in a sense, yeah, is that Zera Levatola just goes to the floor wherever it goes to, yeah? It's not being contained by anything. So two things. Number one, it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and more tumor. But number two, you can get it back. Whereas with Bias Asurus, where the Zera goes into a keli, which is called a keli de nukva, what does he call it? Nukva de klipa. It goes into the feminine of the klipa, which would be, even if it was with another man, that he would be called the feminine in that sense, when he's a receptacle. Yeah, he's a kli kibul. So when there's Zera Levatola, the Zera, the energy, the life force, the kedusha falls on the floor, Rachmanas, and that means the tumor just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. But because it's not being held by anything, you can get it back. Whereas for Keret, with Bias Asurus, the Zera ends up in a kli, in a vessel, in a feminine vessel, and that vessel locks it down and holds onto it. So there isn't that reboy, that expansion of tumor, but to extract the kedusha is much more difficult. So there's kinds of pros and cons to both. We shouldn't be involved in either, but you understand what he's explaining. You understand what he's explaining. Okay. Oh, let's just read the note here. We haven't been reading the note, but let's just read this note very quickly, which was written by the Tzemach Tzedek. Why is it that it takes a deeper tshuva to rectify the sin of forbidden relations? He explains. I said this basically. The klipa, because this zera was received or absorbed. It was absorbed into the foundation of what's called the nukva de klipa, the feminine klipa, that received and absorbed this life from kedusha. Not the case with Zera Levatola. She'ein sham b'chinas nukva de klipa. There isn't there this level of nukva, of feminine, the feminine klipa. Rak that its energy and its messenger, so to speak. They become enclosed. They enclose the energy in these drops. Okay, let's carry on. And this is how we understand what Chazal said. It says it's from Koheles. What is something that is twisted or distorted or bent that can't be fixed? Somebody who has relations with an erva, with a forbidden, with a lady, a woman who's forbidden to him, v'hoilid mamza, and the woman gives birth to an illegitimate child, which is called a mamza. She'az gam im ya'aseh tshuva gedola kolkach. that even if he does a very big tshuva, it's impossible to extract the chiyas from the kedusha. So the chiyas to kedusha, because this, so to speak, this avera came down into this world, and it became enclosed in a body of flesh and blood. So just as as a side point, in the Tanya, they bring a note, one of the Perushim in Tanya, they bring a note from the Rayats, the Friediger Rebbe, and he said that if a person does have an illegitimate child for a woman, and he does really, really, really deep tshuva, yeah, then that child, or could be a man at that point or whatever, will die, and the tipas will be released from that. Meaning that it's always possible. Tshuva is always possible. That's what the riots added to this. Yeah. So now we got the idea, yeah. So we'll finish now on this thought, which should really give us a big chizuk for all of Elul. It's really apropos that we're learning this. It's really hashkacha that we're learning this for Elul. Why? What's the machlokes, or what accounts for the difference in minhagim? Let's see if anyone can chap this now from what we've said. Why would it be that the Ashkenazim don't do a Shamnu Begadnu? What could you think, after what we've just said, what could you think would be a reason why you wouldn't say the vidui alpi, the aleph base?
Because it just needs a tshuva nachona, like it's an apology, and stop, don't do it, recognize it, and commit to not doing it.
That is a tshuva nachona, a shamnu begadnu. That is tshuva, unless it could be done on a much deeper, but a shamnu begadnu. So that thing, try and think again. Remember, keep in mind the idea of the goof and the neshama, the kli and the or.
I mean, if you say it without emotion, what have you really done?
Yeah, what have you? No, you've done something. What have you done? If you say without charata,
I mean, you're breaking the goof. The goof.
Yeah,
only.
You break the goof. But if you didn't do it with charata, then what happens to the energy inside?
It just goes. It stays.
No,
it's marba, like Sarah Levatala.
Yeah, like we just said. Verstehen? So everyone understood? If we just say a shamnu begadnu gazanu, yeah, that's going through the aleph base. That is a vidui. But if there wasn't any charata, then that didn't reduce or extract the neshama of the avera, the nefesh of the avera. So the or, so to speak, the negative or remains. And if we remove the body, then just like what the Rebbe said over here, then there's this riboy of tumah. So this is the chizuk, okay? Is when you say a shamnu begadnu, yeah? Have some kavana. Have some kavana. The stakes are high. These are real things we're messing around with here. The stakes are high. So just make sure to have some kind of charata for the selfishness that we've put into all these averas that we've done. We don't have to think. There's no miler to thinking about the avera. Remember we haven't really said this yet, but we'll say it later. Is tshuva is not oi, I'm so bad. Tshuva is Rabbanu Shalom, you deserve so much more. Look at what you've given to me. Look at who you've made. Look at everything you've given to me. I'm not talking like I'm amazing, I'm this and that. I mean, I'm not talking about all the pleasures that you've given me, just all the koichas you've given me, how much value I can add to your world. not because I'm so great, just because look at you made me. Just, every human being can add so much value to Hashem's world. And I'm just here involved in myself the whole time. That's real tshuva. Ribono Shloilem, I'm just embarrassed. You've given me so much that I can give to you, and I'm just using it for myself. That's real tshuva. Not I could be so much more. It's a madrega anyway to say I could be so much more, but it's a much it's much more real to say, Ribono Shloilem, you deserve so much more from me. You really do. It's like you get that with your kids sometimes. Sometimes your kid does something and Hashem gives you the right words to say or whatever, gives you the right look to say. And you see a kid do tshuva. You see a kid come back to you. He's not about, I want to be better. It's like, my dad deserves this. He really does. That you see that, you know what I'm talking about? You see that, yeah? That's tshuva. That's real. That's really that's tshuva. And that's what Elul is all about. That's really what it's all about, is reorienting ourselves back to just put it all in perspective. We got created and we belong to him. That's ani l'doidi, doidi li. That's ani l'doidi. I am to my beloved, meaning I belong to him. I'm his. I belong to him. He owns me. That's not a nice way of saying it, but I belong to him. That's the first part. But he then says that back to us. But the first part of the equation is us getting very clear that we belong to him. And that's the whole thing. That's why we say the first thing we say in Shemona Esrei is Koiner Koil. He owns everything. He's the balabas, including me. I belong to him. He owns me. I belong to him. Whatever Loshen like resonates with you. But that's what Elul is. As we said many times, Elul is Psuke de Zimra. And that's what Psuke de Zimra is the reorienting ourselves back to recognizing that he is the balabayas. He owns everything. It's all his. And then Kriya Shema is the actual mamash, the deep receiving of that, the Kabbalah's oil Malchus Shemayim. And that's Rosh Hashanah. And then we can go out of Mitzrayim, which is the Aseret Tshuva, and then we can step into Shemona Esrei, where we don't belong to him anymore. We are him, mamash. That's Shemona Esrei. Yeah, that's Yom Kippur. And then we're ready to go back into the Sukkah and rededicate ourselves to him on a Lamaisa level. Everything's for you, Ribono Shloilem. I'm going to eat for you. I'm going to sleep for you. I'm going to speak divrei chol for you. Everything is for you, Ribono Shloilem. That's it, and that's Shachris, and that's the Yomim Noraim, and that's I call it the Shachris Hashanah. So right now we're just starting Psuke de Zimra. So we know what, as Michael's told us, yeah, what is it? Tefillah Shachris, Psuke de Zimra, Taf Shim Pei Daled. I've said that to a lot of people now. And that's it. We're now, this is the real one. Yeah, this is the Shachris Hashanah. So let's take it seriously. And again, this is the whole beauty of what we're talking about here, is it doesn't mean sit there with a cheshbon and nefesh and you write down all your aveiros and you write down all the things that you need to get mischazek in. You need to be nicer to your wife. You need to stop being manuvul peh without lashon hara. You have to make sure you're on time for shachris. You have to make sure that you check your tefillah. You have to make sure that you're hard, you don't eat so much, and that you're hard with your stark with your hechsherim and onward and no, you don't need to do any of that. Just remember that you belong to him. It's so simple. Just that's the avoider. And this is what I've said this to Gabriel a few times. This idea of taking stuff on. Yeah, you'll notice that I never talk about taking things on. I talk about taking on learning projects the whole time, yeah? But you never hear me about taking on stuff like avoiders. Why? Because the avoiders are meant to be an outgrowth of where you are emotionally. Meaning, if you're taking on to not carry, let's say you're taking on to not carry when there's an Eruv, yeah? That's not a gilui of the relationship. That's you're just doing some act because you think that's like you want to be starker. But when you've learned the halachas and you realize that you're playing with fire when you don't know if this Eruv could be like this, could be like that, you're just not going to carry. It's an automatic thing. So the taking on the actions, yeah, that doesn't need a kind of conscious, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. That's just an outgrowth of who you are. But the take on the learning projects, that's a different thing. That's just, that's just business. That's Pasha business. If you've got a big project to do, you have to work it out, take it on, divide it up, make a commitment, whatever it is, talk it out and get that, because that takes logistics. But when it just comes to like starkening up in something, well, why are you not stark? Well, you're going to take on not speaking Lashon Hara? Why are you speaking Lashon Hara? You obviously don't realize that you belong to him. You think that you've got some kind of independence where you're allowed to speak Lashon Hara. Get clear that you belong to him and that he doesn't let you speak Lashon Hara, and you stop speaking Lashon Hara. Verstehen? It's very simple. Hashem's mamash, he's on our side, and he's what's the word? He's arranged the whole thing that we should be matzliach. He's set us up for success. He's a loving father. He's done everything in his power to set us up for ultimate success, and that we can still actually own the success in a sense. That's very liberating and comforting. Okay, B'ezrat Hashem, should be a good chodesh. Shall be.
Thank you so much.
Amen. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Okay.
Once you get that big picture relationship, that's really Elul Rosh Hashanah, then I think Aseret Yimei Tshuva is then actually putting it into pratim of actually taking something on.
It will. What I'm trying to say is, if you've done,
it has to come from relationship.
It will just start. It won't be like I'm taking this on. You'll just be like, I can't believe I wasn't doing this. I can't.
But sometimes you do have to take something small on.
I'll give you an example. I was thinking about taking something on for the new year, and I thought about that a few weeks ago, and I said, when it comes to New Year, I'm going to take it on. I already took it on. Like, I just did it already. What am I waiting for?
That's the whole point. That's exactly the point. But the learning projects, take on learning projects. That
Well, that gets you there, yeah.
That really is important, and that will actually that gives you that connect. That gives you the relationship where you actually then start doing stuff. But the external actions, they should, like we know, behavior is an outgrowth of emotions. It is also mashpia back into the emotions, but the behavior is there is what to be said about that as well.
Meaning it has to come from a real place of connection.
Yes.
But Lamaisa, sometimes that real place of connection then says, Haran, grow up, stop doing this. We're going to be mechazik not to do this thing anymore because we know can't do this anymore. Like, again, it sometimes comes down to putting your foot down and saying, this thing is going to change. I got to change this thing, and then being stark with that thing. It's taking on those.
Taking on something, though. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, the idea of, like, I suppose you could say it is like taking on. Say it. You get the idea. You get the idea.
The point is, it has to be driven from big picture, not from minutia.
Yeah. Well said. Okay.
All right. Good Rosh Chodesh.